offside.
Welcome back to another episode of No Offsides. I'm Dan Dean here, and I have a special guest all the way out on the West Coast. He is the commissioner of the Unify Elite Draft League in San Diego. I want to welcome Josh Fountaine. How are you, bud?
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Dan.
Yeah, no, thank you. When you reached out to me, I was like, absolutely, I want to hear more about the SoCal roller hockey scene. So
Yeah, there's a lot going on, man. We're busy down here.
well, California in general seems like a busy place for roller hockey.
Yeah, between San Diego, well, Escondido actually, it's part of the San Diego roller hockey scene. Between there and Corona and Irvine, there's a lot of hockey to be played, and that's not even including the street hockey leagues and Ventura, Adam Poe with Ventura, that league
Yeah.
up there. A lot of hockey to be played.
Now there was also a beach league, isn't like a beach meetup on? Is that in your area as well?
That's up north. I'm actually
Okay.
not super familiar with it. I've wanted to get plugged in with it because that looks super fun. But no, that's north of us. That's up towards LA.
Okay. All right. I wasn't quite sure. I'm not familiar with the demographic, not demographic, the layout of California in general, but you know,
No, it's in our backyard. It's right around the corner from us because I've seen pictures. Like I'm sure like you've seen it pop up on Instagram. It's like Travis Snow and
yeah,
I think John Seamer.
yeah,
They'll all be hopping around up there, and they got this big paved area that's right by the beach. Like it's like very classic pro beach hockey kind
yeah.
of vibes. But from what I understand, it's pretty casual. I don't know if they have boards up. I don't think they do. Might have the sauce kits out there, but it looks like a ton of fun. Like it's very Southern California kind of roller hockey kind of setup. So
It would typically be a shorter drive, but with traffic, I'm sure it's a haul.
oh my God, yeah. No, it's I'd like to do something like that down here
Okay.
in like Oceanside, which is I'm closer to downtown San Diego
Okay.
than Escondido, but that's like 30, 45 minutes, closer to 30 minutes if I speed. But if I go up to Oceanside, I want to do something like that up there. I've been kicking around the idea of booking the Oceanside Amphitheater, playing right by the water. You've got, nice,
Okay.
seating right there. But yeah, get a nice like sunset by the beach, playing some hockey. There are worse things to do on the weekend.
Oh,
So
sure. I mean, some people will say hockey on the weekend is their church.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, let's talk about you know your second season in on the Unify Elite Draft League, right? And Unify just jumped in on, let's just call it brand name of the draft league, which is awesome. But where did the idea of this draft league come from?
Yeah, so what's bananas is we play a 10-game season and we're already 9 games in, which is hard to believe. So we got one more regular season game, then we've got playoffs. But the origin of this, and I got to give credit where credit's due, Dan Maxwell, he was already doing a draft league up in Irvine. And I'm sure a lot of people watching, they're already familiar with Dan and the OC Blades program that he runs, and Wheel Hut, his pro shop up there at the Irvine rink. But I took a lot of inspiration from him, the pro style drafts, fantasy football, that kind of format. And then in 2023, this was actually late 2022, I started kicking around the idea, and I was like, I'd really like to go and take as much of our talent we already have in the area. Because a lot of guys, whenever they wanted to play at a higher level, they would leave San Diego, they go play up north, they go to Irvine, they go to Corona, Huntington Beach when it was around. And I was like, I think that we can get a pretty good league going down here in San Diego using our own talent.
Sure.
So I didn't feel like there were enough opportunities for them to play in a competitive, structured, fun environment that still felt accessible. So wanted to create something that mirrored a tournament format of hockey. Say that 5 times fast. That also built community, gave players like a sense of pride, and showcase the best of what San Diego hockey had to offer. But my buddy Gabe John, we sat down in late 2022 and we just started sketching out like, all right, well, if we do a draft league in San Diego, what do we want the rules to be? How many
Okay.
games? And, putting pen to paper. Um, and then it started to come together. I'm like, all right, who else do I want involved with this? So that's when I tapped the San Diego Gulls announcer, their in arena announcer, Callum McClurg.
Okay.
I was like, hey, you've got a soft spot for roller hockey. Would you want to be a PA announcer, be a goal announcer for our league as well? So like things started to form up early 2023, and that's when I put the announcement out there. And then we were off to the races by June 2023 for that first season. So we had partnered with, shout out to Brian Arguello with Hot Hot Hockey. He was our first uniform partner. He was super helpful with getting us ramped up.
Okay.
So he gave us like some really sweet designs. All the uniforms and the team names are inspired by like the San Diego geography. So the Mission Bay Ospreys, that was a fun team name that we had. There's actually this, and we posted about this too. We had like an article that Gabe wrote about the origin of each of the team names.
Yeah, I actually have that. I have that pulled up on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
monitors, and so I was, before starting the podcast, I was actually reading some of the reasons why, and I was looking at the captains and stuff like that. So it is a lot of interesting information, and for anyone who's listening, you can always go over to elitedraftleaguesd.com and you can find out in the news panel or on this, you can look at why people are captains and why team names are the names they are.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy one. Like it just made sense for the Ospreys because we would go over to, like it says in the article, there are these old tennis courts near there's an aquatic center on Mission Bay, and no one really uses it much, but we took advantage of the open tennis court, and perched right above on one of those light poles is this giant osprey nest. And you can't use one half of the tennis court because you've got the osprey, pooping out the side
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So that's out of bounds for the hockey area. But on the other half, you can play a nice, fun game of shinny. When the sun starts to go down, we're across the water from SeaWorld, so you have like fireworks going off overhead.
Oh, nice.
It's really sweet. Like it's quintessential, Southern California hockey. So yeah, no, it was honestly just, talking to people that, they cared about the growth of the sport. They cared about roller hockey. We drew from, local inspiration, local uniform suppliers. It's very much a community effort, dude. And it's like the support has been incredible. It's been rewarding to see how the league has become a hub for roller hockey in San Diego, bringing people together. Just community building is what is at the core of what I want to do.
Well, and for guys that play competitively in like this summer circuit, it's nice to have that competitive drive all year round. Whereas like you can go and play, and there is, let's just take my league for instance. There are talented individuals. There is also guys who playing it casually. So also there's not enough to fill up like this super competitive top league. So you have a mix of players. So I'm sure, for myself, I'm like, I would love to do something like that one day. But I'm sure a lot of guys appreciate it to the fact that they're like, I get to go and I know I'm playing against solid players every week.
I think another thing, and there's another aspect to draft leagues that I think most people don't consider, is hockey teams in general are pretty, isolated from each other. It can be cliquey at times depending on where you're playing. So when you have a draft league, all the players are thrown into the pot, and you're mixing up who's playing with who. So it's like you may have seen this guy, at your rank, you've played against him for years, but it's like you don't really know him. But it's like you're forming these new connections now within the community, and it's like you hit up this new guy that you're playing with, on this brand new draft team. It's like now you can ask them to play, echo tournaments with you, Narch tournaments, so on and so forth. So I think that's been a positive unintended side effect of doing the draft league, is just creating new connections with players they would have otherwise probably not played with.
Well, and I also, so like our league went before the storm, even now when we try and keep people active, we are a draft league as well, and so what's also people come from all over and transplant to us, and they come in and they're like, "Wow, that's like the nicest league." And I'm like, "Well, because you can be an asshole one season, and you might get drafted on that guy's team the next season." I said,
Yep.
"So there's pros and cons of playing like a dick."
It's true. Yeah, it's like you're gonna have to be that guy's teammate most likely, but also it's like, roller hockey is such a small world. Like
Yeah,
I keep learning that lesson over and over. Because like we were talking about before the show even started, I was like, "You're Jimmy's brother." I'm
yeah,
like, I love Jimmy. Like
yeah,
I knew Jimmy before I knew you, but then I
yeah.
saw your last name pop up. I'm like, hang on. But no, it's I grew up playing with your buddy Jake Kapitsky. Love Jake, US Roller Cup.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we've got all these, crossovers.
Yeah,
Roller hockey is a small world. It never pays to be a dick. You're right.
yeah, yeah. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. Don't do it.
Yeah. So with this league, right? You talked about having someone who announces games, right? So
Mhm.
what platform are you streaming on?
So we just switched to Twitch. So
Okay.
before we had a pretty rudimentary setup. It was Instagram Live because there was no internet at the facility at the Escondido Sports Center. Even if there was internet, it probably wasn't going to be sufficient bandwidth to go and stream with.
Yeah.
But we upgraded our streaming setup for this season. We got a couple of hotspots, one on the AT&T network, one on the Verizon network, whichever one is playing nice that day. So as it goes, but there's also a metal structure, like a metal roof
Yeah.
around the rink, and that affects the signal too. So we
For
really
sure.
had to go and figure out the network connectivity side. But we've been on Twitch. We've got multiple camera angles as opposed to last year when it's just Instagram Live. You got one camera and it's from
Yeah.
your phone, so
Oh
the
yeah.
clarity is not that good. But Twitch has been a big upgrade for us.
So just curious, is there like was it just user friendly to go to Twitch than it was, let's just say, like something like YouTube or something like that?
Yeah, with YouTube, correct me if I'm wrong. I remember when I dove into it, when I was creating the channel for YouTube, and I was like, I want to see if I could do YouTube live. I was like, I think I had to have so many subscribers, so many hours of doing it on YouTube, and we just didn't meet that criteria to have a YouTube live channel. So I was like, we'll go with Twitch. I was more comfortable, more familiar with Twitch at the time.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and a good chunk of our player base are actually gamers too. So I
Usually,
feel
yeah.
like there's a decent overlap. Like getting them on Twitch, it was a much easier adoption rate. So
Okay. I'm just curious.
yeah,
Now, because I am right now looking at your captain's page, I am curious. One, how are captains chose chosen? And two, do you rotate captains?
yeah. So last season, we were figuring a lot of things out, but the one thing that I knew I wanted to do was get guys that had been captains were currently managing teams. So this is 2024. So I asked guys that were managing a lot of we have 30 plus, novice, intermediate, and advanced division. So I asked
Okay.
4 advanced division captains of those teams to also be captains for the first season of our draft league. So I asked Noe Santos, Tanner Steffen, AJ Wright, and Matt Hamilton. All those guys had, they're very responsible guys. They knew how to go and do the communication side of managing a team. So they were fantastic. So Noe Santos, I want to give him his flowers. He manages, so he's only 22, 23 years old, and he's managing like 6 youth teams.
Oh,
So
dang.
the entire Unify Triton's youth program, that's him, Aaron Amos. So for someone as young as he is, it's like I felt very comfortable handing the reins for a team over to him.
Okay.
But they made that draft process super easy, communication, collecting payment, all that stuff. But really, I drew from a pool of existing captains. It made sense to go with those guys.
And then this year, you have Pasha, Reed, Rory, and Wes.
Yeah. So for Pasha, he's a San Diego native. All those guys I think are San Diego natives. So that it was an easy sort of bio write up. Whenever I'm introducing the captains, like this is
Yeah.
an Escondido native, he's a San Diego native. They've got fantastic playing experience.
He
Like
even
you
ha-
can go through. Go ahead.
he even has the San Diego Padres SD on the jersey you have presented for him. So it all works.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the marketing was super easy. So, I mean, that was another layer too, because like they all know Rory. All
Yeah.
these guys know Pasha and Wes. Like, Wes has extensive experience, being a ref,
Hmm.
coaching. So he's, ingrained in the San Diego hockey scene. So, when I was talking to Gabe, my co-commissioner, and Callan, we started these conversations. Sheesh, like almost as soon as the last season ended. I was like, all right, who do we want to ask to be captains? And literally the first four guys that we asked to be captains, they all said they were in, which was really cool.
Oh, nice.
Which is, really encouraging buy-in from the community that they were um, stoked to be involved.
Hmm. Now, the next thing that caught my eye, not only like how you like for me, I mean, I like the minor details where some people are probably like, oh, who cares about who's captain, blah blah blah. But like for me, I'm like, I'm all for it. But these the team names, the jerseys, I mean, they're pretty sweet.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No, we put a lot of effort, a lot of thought into choosing the designs and the names and all that stuff. I got to give a lot of credit to Callan McClurg. So Callan is our local hockey historian. You can ask him literally any question. Like if there's a bar trivia night for the San Diego Gulls or anything hockey in California, he's your guy. He's your cheat code. So like your phone a friend, you call Callan. But he cares a lot about San Diego sports as a whole because he's done PA announcing for the Angels,
Okay.
all sorts of sports teams. So when I went to him and I was like, what regions do we want to represent and what do you want our mascots to be? So we go out for cigars over in Old Town and we're sitting there and, we're puffing away. And he's like, I think we should go with Escondido. And representing the Escondido area, you choose the safari park. There's an awesome
Okay.
safari park. And the rhinoceros is there, a pretty big attraction for the safari park. So Escondido rhinos, cool, mark that off the list.
Yeah.
And just like you just go down Cardiff Stingrays. So Stingrays, that was an homage to the Stingrays, the San Diego Stingrays
Yeah.
youth program that was in the area. And we felt like we needed to choose like a surf kind of spot. So going with Cardiff, that area, Cardiff by the Sea.
Sure.
Leucadia, that's a favorite surf spot of mine. Going up that direction, a number of other guys too. So we actually had a couple of revisions going back and forth with Steven with Unify on the longboarders one. That's one we agonized over the most. I was like, I want pink, but I don't want it to be too obnoxious. Like,
Yeah.
because that's a fine line to walk with those loud colors. But I felt like Steven, he stuck the landing. He did a great job with that. And then the pandas, that was like the pandas had just come back into town to the San Diego Zoo because I'm not an expert on this. I think the San Diego Zoo gets them on loan from China.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of advertising around town talking about how the pandas were back. So I'm like, the zoo's in Balboa pandas, that's done. So it was like, it took us, I think, 30 minutes to figure out the names. Like we were, bam, bam, bam. And we were pretty close to being done.
I mean, the panda jerseys are definitely my favorite. They're, they're loud in their own way, not in colors, but in design that is so unique. So those ones, I draft me to that team.
Yeah, there you go. I know there were a couple of guys that they were like particularly partial to like certain teams, like because we released the uniforms before we did the draft.
Yeah.
So I sent it out to the captains. Like we totally did like a dice roll on like who was picking first, and if you got the last pick, you got the first choice on uniforms. So
Oh.
that's how we decided that, like which captain got which team. But like Nathan Robert, my buddy Nathan Robert, he runs the H3 Reapers program. They've got the bright pink uniforms. I think Roller Dad, they did a highlight on them.
Yeah.
So he texted me like immediately as soon as I did the uniform drop. He's like, I better get drafted by the Longboarders. I need another pink uniform in my life. So I was like, oh, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, it's been fun.
Yeah. I mean, they're super clean. The details are there. You can notice that. Trying to think here. I just the little things, kind of like there's a guy holding a surfboard, but it's not a dude, it's a skeleton, right? The Panthers jersey is bamboo. The Rhinos jersey is a rhino head, but through the bottom of it and on the pants, it's kind of like a safari sunset kind of scenery. So it
Mhm.
all just flows. It's super clean.
Thank you. And that was something where I talked to Dan Maxwell about how he did his draft league. I was like, all right, any tips and tricks, like, what have you learned in your first couple of seasons of doing it up there? And one of the first things he told me was, one, if you can just have a single jersey and pant combo
Hmm.
and make all of them unique, the way you can keep your costs a little bit lower, do it that way. So that's when I was talking to Unify. When I'm talking to Steven, I was like, all right, I think these colors have enough contrast to where we can throw any combo of these teams out there and they shouldn't be confusing. Like you see, a Pandas player out of the corner of your eye and you're on the long borders, it's like that's pretty clear with those color
Yeah.
choices. So um yeah, I thought Steven knocked it out of the park. Like there was no back and forth on 3 of the 4 uniforms. I was like, no notes, you got it perfect. So um
Yeah, I mean, I could say I've definitely made the mistake. You go with like a red and an orange, and then after orange gets all sweaty, it's now darker and now it looks closer to red. And guys are like, I can't tell the difference. Or a purple and a blue. It's just like there's only so many color jerseys you can buy out there.
yeah. No, it's true. And another thing too, 2 of the guys in our first season that were involved, like they were captains, in leadership, kind of in our front office, they're colorblind. So I was like,
Mm.
all right, how did these colors work? Is this enough of a contrast? Like, help me out here. So we tried to really think through it.
Well, I'm gonna say well done because they're sweet.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Now, where am I at on my notes here? Because still have a few questions here. Um, Now I've heard. So like, is there a waiting list for the draft league? Because most draft league it's pretty handpicked because you want the best talent. So is it like, hey, here's everyone that put their name on it, and then captains just choose from a big pool, and then whoever doesn't get drafted gets left out?
Yeah, the latter of what you said, because we only do this during the summer. If
Okay.
it was a rolling registration, we probably would have a waiting list. But and also answering another question you asked earlier, we do rotate the captains. So it's like for the 2026 season, we'd have a new slate of captains. Everyone goes back into the hopper, and it's fresh picks all around. But I think we had we had a lot of people that didn't get picked. But the process is, it's like we put the draft evaluation skate out there,
Okay.
and you're not required to attend. But all the captains, they've got access to our draft rankings, everything. But just like if you play fantasy football, it's like the pre-draft rankings and all that stuff. We go to all that trouble, but we try to equip the captains as much as
Okay.
possible ahead of time to be like, these are the guys that are available. These are the guys that showed up to the draft evaluation skate if you didn't, know them already. But we do 10 starters, and those guys are entitled to play every single game. And then each captain would pick 2 subs. Those guys, if they're, tapped by the captain to go and play, like their call up, if you will, they could play on a per game basis. And then 2 goalies, a starter and a backup. So
Okay.
if the starter didn't play, obviously the backup, they would jump in. We ran into a couple of situations already, just like the hazard of holidays, playing over the summer with travel and whatnot. We had a couple of e-bugs come in. One was my buddy Mike Irving, so he's a beauty. I think he's playing in 30 plus in plat for this upcoming tournament. And then Quinlan Johnston, which Quinlan was just reposted. He won 18U AAAs with Roadrunners at Tours this
Okay.
past weekend. So he was our other e-bug. So even if we didn't have all of our starting goaltenders in the mix, it's like our e-bugs were still pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So we've been lucky.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Um, oh, that's one thing I wanted to talk about. So I'm interested in your playoff format.
Yes,
So you have a play-in game, and I guess the one seed automatically makes it to the championship after regular season.
you got it. We wanted to incentivize getting the first seed because
Okay.
what we did last year, which was we only have 4 teams, but I was really torn after last year. I was like, do we want to expand? Do you want to go to 6 teams? Do we want to do 5 teams? That's each. They've all got their own challenges, but the at the core, I didn't want to dilute the talent of the teams.
Sure.
So I wanted to just, kind of, fill up, our talent level with the 4 teams that we have. We see potential for expansion in the future. Then, we'll add other teams as kind of we go along. But last season we did 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and those were great battles. Like our first seed versus fourth seed, that went about how you thought it was going to be, but it wasn't a blowout.
Okay.
2 versus 3 was a fucking battle. That was a battle. That was one of the most physical games I've ever seen. It was clean for the most part. There were a couple of guys that would beg to differ, but it was. I thought it was a well officiated game, and the guys were playing really hard. And I'm like, how do you replicate that level of effort for all our playoff games? So that's where we're like, I want to make the regular season more valuable by trying to get first seed, so you get that bye almost to the championship, right?
Okay.
But then having the play-in game to give those, maybe those bottom couple of teams, maybe they were missing key players on certain weeks, and so they got the short end of the stick and they didn't get the higher seed. Well, they can redeem themselves. They win the play-in game, and then you make it to the semifinal. Then you have a best of 3. So I wanted to go and give everyone the best chance possible to prove their worth. Do they belong in that seed? If they didn't actually belong in that seed, well, you can go and play in to go in and keep pushing through the playoffs when you've got all of your guys there. So,
Sure.
yeah, one tweak that we did make, and I made this adjustment kind of at the 11th hour. This was a couple of weeks ago. I made this change. So originally, so we've got a July break. I think we resumed play the last weekend in July because of March finals,
Yeah.
July 4th, all that stuff. So I originally had the first seed not playing for over a month, and then they just go straight into their playoff game. And I was like, that's too long of a layoff. We can't do that. So we wound up doing one of their best of 3 on 1 week, and then the potential other 2 games the following week, so they can go and kind of get their feet back under and get the rust off. So because not playing for a month that's a while.
Yeah. I mean, so you got the 3 versus 4 play in, then the 2 plays with the winner of that, and then the winner of that plays a best of 3, which I always love a best of 3 finals. It's just something that I enjoy, that I experimented with in my league over the winter for trying to get us to play again. But yeah, just more hockey's better. I mean, and so it's like someone like the 1 seed is like, oh, we missed out on 2 games, but not necessarily, because you're gonna get your 2 games, in your best of 3. So everyone plays roughly about the same amount.
Exactly. No, you took the words out of my mouth. More hockey, man. So
Yeah.
you get to play more roller hockey, and that's never a bad thing.
So you have other, I want to call it ventures, or other projects that you work on or are participate in on the side. One of them being the Ringster Mavericks.
Yeah, so Ringster Mavericks, that started off. I'm trying to remember what the genesis of that was. I think that was late 2022. I took a 10-year break from playing hockey. So I think the last tournament that I played, the last hockey that I played, was when I was living in North Carolina, because I grew up playing in the Apex area, so at Dream Sports Center back in the day. I think it's XL Sports World now.
Yeah.
Went from a 2-sheeter down to 1 rink. So I played my last tournament out there with, I think it was Chris Street, his Raleigh Assault, the Alkali Assault, that team. And then I hung up the skates, and that was it. So I didn't play for a decade. So we moved out here. So we've been out here for a handful of years, and I rediscover hockey, gets his claws back into me, and
Always
I'm
does.
like, Oh, it has a way of doing that. It's a funny thing. And I was like, I had the itch to go and like manage a team again. I was like, I had become good friends with Gabe John at the time, and a couple of these other dudes. And I was like, what if we just we started another Narch tournament team, and it kind of just grew from there. But we started playing men's silver. I'm trying to get the rust off because a
Sure.
decade. It's not like riding a bike. Like the cardio doesn't come back. I'm a little bit older now than I was when it was like 22, 23 when I stopped playing.
Yeah.
So I'm like mid 30s now, but we started off in men's silver, worked our way up to men's gold. So for this tournament for Narch finals, we've got a number of guys that are coming from Southern California, NorCal,
Okay.
Texas that are flying. Zach Zinna, my buddy Zach
Okay.
Zinna,
Yep.
great dude. So we'll all be playing together for Narch finals, but um, we partnered with Ringster with Rink Rats. That's Fabio.
Yep.
He's been fantastic to work with. But give them a little bit of a plug. I was not a believer in the Tricksters and their product at first, and he's like, I've got a sweet discount. I'm gonna push it your way, and that's like I can't say no. So
Yeah.
I got to give these a try because I don't know if you remember the Hot Shots
Oh yeah.
and the Ring Rat Hot Shots and Hornets and stuff, and they were a heavier wheel back in the day, and I was like, I'm gonna stick with my Millenniums, and I'll be fine. But I get this sweet discount after aligning with Rinkrat slash Ringster, and I'm like, these are pretty awesome. So that's when I had that buy-in with the brand, and it just made sense to go with them as our uniform supplier and everything. So we've been rolling with them for over 2 years now. But they've been fantastic. They've taken care of us. Their shipping speed is awesome. I don't mean for this to sound like a commercial. They got great wheels and bearings. There's nothing to lose. I would give them a shot if you haven't done so already.
Now, switching, I guess we could say brands,
Mhm.
right? You also have the new Conix women's pro team.
Yes, no, super stoked about that. So Blake Bolden, so she's the captain. We crossed paths coming up on 2 years ago, year and a half ago. We were just out there shooting around at the rink, and you're taking a break in between shooting pucks at open
Yeah.
rink, and you strike up a conversation. It's like, hi, I'm Josh, and she's a scout for the LA Kings.
Yeah.
She's on ESPN as an analyst, Amazon TV for the NHL. So like, she's well plugged into the hockey
Yeah.
side of things. So she knows her way around the rink. But where she needed help was on the roller hockey side of things.
Okay.
So getting introduced to like, all right, who should I choose as a uniform supplier? So I introduced her to Stephen Campbell with Unify. So helped with that. Um, Getting them set up with wheels, all of that stuff, practice times, but just getting oriented with like, who do you need to know in roller hockey
Sure.
here? And just helping her with my network that I had there. But the roster, and I don't want to I'm not stealing her thunder. I'm gonna let her do the roster reveal and all that stuff. But it is a who's who of professional D1 ice, PWHL players. So it's Olympians.
Okay.
It's a solid roster. So I was honored when I was asked to help manage their team, to be their coach. So I'm super stoked to be behind the bench for them for Narch Women's Pro. That's going to be super fun. But our schedule, I don't know if you had the chance to look at our schedule. We've got some steep competition. We've got I think Palma is our first game, then Factory, Ringster Factory. But I think they're just going by Ringster for this tournament. It's not Ringster Factory, but it's the Factory team for all intents and purposes. Then Black Ice. So that's our first three games that we get right off the bat. It's kind of that welcome to Narch Pro moment. Um, and then our last game is against the Factory developmental team, the Ringster Vibe. I think that's the squad, but um, no, we're super stoked to be wheeling here. And how far out is it? 10 days?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, depending on some people, start this weekend and it goes all the way through to the following week, right? So, I mean, the women's divisions, it's a division to watch, and I always enjoy watching. I mean, I watch the men's every time. like watching the women's because it's just a different vibe, but
Hmm.
also those girls are savages.
Oh yeah. No, it's going to be a battle. I think not. This may be hot takey, but I don't know if you're here for the hot takes, but I think
I'm
I've got
here.
a
I'm
hot
here
take.
for the hot takes.
I think I've got a hot take. I think the most competitive pro division is going to be the women's and not the men's. This feels like, in my opinion, I think this is a weaker men's pro
Okay.
this year than in years past. And I think this is the most competitive women's pro division that I've seen in a little bit. Just doing my research, talking to people, and they seem to generally be in alignment there. But I'm glad that Black Ice is coming out here. I think there's going to be a bunch of really solid games. I think are definitely going to be worth tuning into.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it now, and I have. I mean, High Choose always up there, right, for women's. Hope NCI Phoenix. Uh, you have the Conics team. You have the Golden Knights, which is always
Yep.
another solid team. Rinkster, always a solid team because
Yep.
it's usually Rinkster, Golden Knights in the finals for the most part. Rinkster vibes new. Terrapins are new on the scene. I think they maybe their first time in was last year, right? If I'm
That's
correct.
right.
Um, Black Ice. I mean, it's the West Coast, so even in the men's, you kind of the East Coast teams are in and out. Um, but yeah, you have 8 women's pro teams, which I feel like is pretty. That's a high number for Narch this year. Um,
Yeah, we're super excited. Yeah, because like on the factory team, I've had the chance to skate with Tia Stoddard. She's so good. Like you give her the puck anywhere in the slot area, the puck is probably going in. Like she's just a wizard out there. So playing against her, that's going to be a tall task. The Terrapin squad, I know they dropped their roster. That's Parker Kalman
mhm.
that's helping manage that. But Fox J, she's solid. She's fast. I've skated with her before. She's got a really good shot. She's fast.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, there's going to be some really good competition, and it seems like it's pretty well distributed for this women's pro. Because like I think in years past, where it's been like you said before, it's been Pama and Factory. It's
yeah,
like just all right, let's play the championship game. Let's just go to it.
yeah.
These are the two best teams. But I don't think it's going to be a shoe in this year.
And I stand corrected on myself. I did look back. There was 8. There's been it's been 8 teams for a little while. So I'll fact check myself on this one because I don't want to misrepresent the women.
No, no.
Um, but I mean, considering it's 8 women's teams, right, and then you also have usually between 12 and 14 men's teams.
Hmm.
Um, it's nice to see that the West Coast is representing where majority it seems to me like where the majority of the women's talent is. And I could be wrong, and I could get shit talked for it, but when you have more women's teams showing up for Norwich than you do for tours, um, you know, State Wars is the pinnacle, so they for the most part they usually show up for that.
Hmm.
But it's nice to see that we have a consistent number and it's not fluctuating.
Yeah, I think a lot of that can be attributed to who's leading some of these women
Sure.
teams too. Aliera, want to give her props. She's had a lot to do with the success of women's roller hockey down here, so
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that she gets recognition. Laura Varanta, all these are just leaders, and
Yeah.
two of them play on Factory, which is it's a bummer that they're on the same team. I wish they play for my team or other teams, but it's like you got to play against super talented people like that. But their leadership is invaluable. And I think that the women's draft tournament, I didn't even mention that. The women's draft tournament that Aliera
Yes.
had a big hand in. Um, yeah, just opportunities for women to play at a high level. It's been cool.
And they also did, if I'm correct, if I correctly saw this, they did an adult women's, and then they did a youth draft. They did a youth one as well, right?
Yeah. No, they did a good job with marketing that. Some of the pictures that came out of that, it was super cute because like you have these little kids that they're playing hockey. their first time, or not a whole lot of times that they've put on skates. But yeah, it's been super fun. That's a big thing that I'm passionate about, is just getting that youth pipeline from roller,
Yeah.
into the adult leagues and whatnot. And I think they're doing a great job with building that pipeline. So getting youth players, getting girls excited to go and play, hopefully at a higher level for women's pro and women's divisions, and for many tournaments to come.
Now, I do want to ask, you don't have to reveal the roster, but are we seeing, for your roster, are we seeing new faces with a mix of just faces from other teams?
Yeah, I think that's something I can share. That was something that I didn't want to do, was snipe players from other teams.
Okay.
I don't think that's how you grow the game. Um, I care deeply about building that community, and that's not very conducive to building community if I'm taking other teams' players. So, trying to give them a better deal to come over and play with us. So, no, these are all fresh faces for the most part. They have experience in roller hockey, but they're not on established Norwich teams. But
Okay.
they've got extensive background in roller. So we've got to practice the week of our first game. So we'll go and get some tile time. A lot of them have been playing ice this entire time. Kind of like Palma Pro.
Yeah.
Those guys are rolling out there after playing in the Null, or playing in the Fed or SPHL, the
Yeah.
NHL, if it's
Yeah.
Patty Maroon.
Yeah. You look at Car Shield, right, and you're like, oh, that guy plays AHL or ECHL or SPH,
Right.
and it's like, okay.
It's kind of that situation with us. So it's
Okay.
like we're borrowing some players, but they are fresh faces, which does grow the game ultimately.
Sure.
I think they're going to have a blast, playing this summer out here in Irvine.
Well, I wasn't sure if, like, I wasn't saying, don't want it to come across like I was saying, oh, you were taking players, but like for some of the team names that aren't there, that were there last year, if those players weren't necessarily on a team,
Hmm.
if you were to pick some of them up.
Yeah, I mean, you do have to be a savvy manager, and figure out like who's available, whose phone number do I have to go and get.
Yeah.
No, not we didn't really do that. All
Okay.
these are fresh faces that I don't think they played last year. Blake, I may get a DM from Blake here in a minute. She'll be like, no, this person played here, so I may get yelled at later. But I'm like 99% sure none of them played Norwich last year.
Okay. Well, that's you like to see it because, I mean, like you said, new faces, you know, potentially a breath of fresh air. Hopefully they do well, and they are like, let's do this again next year, and we get to see Conic's team again.
Yeah, and that's the intention, is to make this sustainable. Have them come back year after year. The uniforms, we'll be doing a uniform drop here in a little bit.
Okay.
Was at the rink for a couple hours yesterday, and we're just doing shots of the new threads that Soupy designed, because we are Unify. But yeah, everyone that's been involved has been fantastic to work with for this team. So from like Nick Boyarski with Conix, they're our wheel supplier. Steven with Unify, a lot of correspondence, a lot of back and forth there,
Okay.
a lot of text chains, just responding at all hours of the night. So making sure that the design is something that Blake is happy with, that the players are excited to go and put on. We even got a meal sponsor, which was really
nice.
exciting. So all the players are being taken care of as well from a local meal supplier, Right Meals. So shout out to
Okay.
Right Meals. Thank you for keeping our players fed. So we're super stoked to get out there on the tile and hopefully have a couple of upsets.
And if you're on another team and you want free meals at Narch Women's Pro, you could always join this team next year.
That's a pretty good selling point. So
And
I'll write that
also,
one down.
yeah, and also, hey, if you're coming from somewhere else in the country and not California, you will be fed. One less expense. I mean, hey, what? How much better could it be?
Honestly, like I could get recruited to so many teams. Like, all right, Josh, we'll give you cheeseburgers. I'm like, say less. Like I'm already there, man. Like I'll take it.
You tell me there's hot dogs on the grill all day.
Done.
Perfect.
Done. I'm there. I love it.
This is great, man. Something fresh like this, always is awesome to talk about because you can talk about Rinks, or you can talk about Palma, you can talk about Haichu and women's division, but a fresh new team, coming onto the scene, bringing people in from ice hockey, and hopefully, those women from ice hockey get the itch and they continue to want to play roller hockey, and that's what it's all about.
Exactly. And not to like go into too much of a sidebar here, but something that is near and dear to my heart, and now I'm going to get on my soapbox here for a second, is I want to continue to see roller hockey grow. And I think
Sure.
there's a large percentage of players. You see this seasonal spike with roller hockey participation in the summer. And it's great to have those ice hockey players come over. I want them to keep playing with
Yeah.
us. But we also can't rely on the seasonal spikes of, ice hockey coming to roller. We also need to build those roller first
Yeah.
players, those kids that are playing in their cul-de-sacs on the street. They're yelling car, pulling their net out of the street. We need more of that. I want to get back to those roller first players, and getting them ingrained in the community. We've got to
Yeah.
rebuild that pipeline. That's doing learn to skate, learn to play. And I think a lot of that is kind of dying from our rinks. That's at least something that
Yeah.
I'm seeing out here.
I mean, and that's happening far too often. The dying of rinks. But what the new, I don't want to say the new, I don't want to say this. What seems to be the new thing happening, for a lack of a better phrase, is the NHL teams starting to invest in, regardless whether they're outdoor rinks or whatnot, but they're investing in rinks that are tiled outside. So,
Mhm.
Because they're even realizing that trying to get people to just jump into ice hockey now is not as doable as it was. So,
Yeah.
it's sure indoor facilities are. I want to say I'm hoping it's a dying thing, but it's also nice to see that the NHL is now investing in roller in hopes to recruit roller to ice. So
Yeah, creating that pipeline. I think the Carolina Hurricanes are top of mind for me because the park they just put a tiled rink at
mhm.
was a park that I grew up playing at,
Okay.
Apex Community Park. But that was like, it was an old caged in basketball court. And they put a whole new like tiled rink outside. I think it's like the waffle weave tile, but it's still better than, painted concrete.
Yep.
But yeah, that investment from NHL teams, that's a big part of it. I know the Ducks out here, they're more invested in like the OC, Irvine, Tustin, that
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
Corona, HB back in the day, Huntington Beach back in the day. But they haven't had as much of a presence down here because their AHL affiliate, the Gulls, this is Ducks country
Sure.
in San Diego, but there's been rumblings that they're going to potentially acquire the Escondido Sports Center,
Okay.
put an ice hockey rink next door, but it remains to be seen what they do with the roller scene down here. But I do think that investment from NHL teams to just have that growth of hockey, that interest in hockey, it's a lower barrier to entry into the sport going the roller to ice route than jumping straight into ice. But the point still stands. It's expensive to get involved in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think we just somehow, some way, gear needs to be cheaper, and I think you will always lack the participation with gear continuing to increase. Um, I always tell people, I mean, if someone ever in my area, like a youth kid, I'm like, I'll give you a broken shaft. It'll be perfect for you. I got hundreds of them in a garbage can in my shed, right?
yep.
I'm like, starting from there, you don't need something brand new. Go to Sideline Swap. Go to the clearance section on any of these hockey websites. They all have clearance. You can buy stuff cheap. I mean, you could even buy something off Amazon if you really wanted to.
Hmm.
I mean, it. And then, of course, there's that phase with kids that it's like they've been playing it long enough, and they're like, "But that kid's good. He's got nice gear. So, mom, dad, I want nice gear."
Mm,
So
yep.
there's always that transition.
Yeah, there was you may have seen my story that I posted the other week. I was like lamenting that Hockey Stick Man didn't carry my
Hmm.
pattern and flex and all that stuff anymore, but I was like, well, maybe I can, try different blade and pattern and different brand and all that stuff. And I go to the local Pure Hockey and I'm like, geez Louise, like $300 for a twig. Like, it makes you appreciate those, budget sticks. I'm like, you
Oh
know what, I'm
yeah,
gonna stick with that. I'm less sad when that breaks versus my $300 twigs. So
yeah. I mean, Champion hooks me up, so I can't complain. Um,
nice.
but you know, yeah. It also the thing is, I don't know if you noticed, but 95 flex is being phased out.
Really?
So every store that I've gone into, and even if you look online, it's very hard to find a 95 flex that's even listed on the website,
Hmm.
let alone a 100 flex. And so, in order to get those, you got to buy the pro stock.
That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Getting PM9 and some of those old blades, like I kind of get that. Because they're trying to get us to go to like, P92 and, all those other curves. There was another curve that someone showed me at the rink yesterday. Like I'd never even heard of it. I'm like, you're making that up. But um, yeah, like I like my gear how I like it. So that's a bummer to hear they're phasing out 95 and some of those stiffer twigs.
Yeah, I mean, this is just something I've noticed, whether it's actually happening or not, or they just sell out that quick and they take it off the website. I could just be super slow. But luckily, when I asked Champion, they have them. So,
Nice.
but yeah, I mean, you got a lot going on. Excuse me. You got a lot going on in SoCal. You got your draft league, you got women's pro, you got the Ringster Mavericks. It seems like you got your hands are full. You got your fingers a little bit in everywhere. I mean, I I hate to ask, but you got anything else going on that you want people to know about?
Yeah, last thing I wanted to plug was just our retro roller channel, and this is more of just like a passion project of mine.
Okay.
I love talking about gear, so like I could bullshit with you talking about like stick flexes and
Yeah.
patterns all day. And that's kind of like where I was like, just surfing eBay, surfing, sideline swap, and just looking for, some of the old skates, the old helmets, wheels, whatnot that I grew up like really loving, and trying to find them so I could, talk about them with other people, other gearheads. So that was where that channel came
Okay.
from. Was just I was stoked about some old gear from the '90s and 2000s, and the most recent interview that I did with Justin Hoffman. I don't know if you had a chance to go and check that out, but I sat down with him, and he's one of the old product designers for Mission Hockey. So like he
Okay.
designed the Vibe chassis. He had a hand in the Mission Wicked Light skates, the Wicked One re-releases. He was involved with that, but talked all sorts of hockey with him. And then he had his transition to Alkali, and he was part of that ground level group
Sure.
that started Alkali, or Armada before they renamed to
Yeah.
Alkali.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's all that channel is just talking about, like, I was 10, 11, 12 years old, and you're looking through the old hockey
Yeah.
magazines, right? And you're just like, I want those skates. And then, you go and show your parents and they're like, $400. Absolutely not. So, and then you fast forward to where we are now, and it's like, I've got, big kid money now. So I'm going to go and buy the skates I always wanted as a kid. And I go and talk about it and share that passion with people. So having the chance to talk to
Okay.
Justin Hoffman the other week and kind of relive those memories, it's been super fun. And some of the engagement that we've gotten, it's been really cool. So people that I didn't expect to engage with the content, I've gotten DMs and
Nice.
they're just like, oh, talk about this next. Oh, you should talk to this person. It's been a blast.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I can talk about old gear too. Like when my brother's team got sponsored by, they're the original Bad Apples,
Yeah.
on the East Coast, and so they went from Bad Apples to then getting sponsored by Nike, who then threw like Nike sticks at them, gloves, and then the Nike rockers,
Yep.
right? So which now kind of evolved into Mars Blade in a way, right?
Hmm.
But then the V forms, I saw that they popped up at Wish Cup last year,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, I got to take a picture of these things. And I think I posted them on our Instagram, and I was like, someone is still using V forms. This is insane.
That's bananas. Yeah, no, that's something I'm hoping to do here in Arch Finals is grab Peter Dale or someone that's played in the Pro Beach hockey, like the original Pro Beach hockey, and I'm hoping to have that conversation. Be like, hey, tell me about the V forms. They probably
Yes.
don't have a super positive opinion of them, but I still want to talk to them about it and be like, hey, when you first put these on, like, what was your thought? Be like, what the hell am I looking at? Like, why are the wheels that way? Like, I'm sure that's going to be their reaction. But like, talk to him and Rich Garvey and pick their brain on that. So that's my next mission is to talk to them about that stuff. But yeah, the next piece of equipment I've got scoped out for Retro Roller is I got this one-piece helmet. It's the Mission Carbster helmet. I don't know if you remember that.
I'm trying to think of it. Obviously, if I saw it, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
No, it was.
It's got the Mission logo right here in the front, right? The old Mission logo.
Yep, and it's got like two big vents on the side.
I think
It looks more like a Formula One helmet than a hockey helmet, but I had an old 10U coach, Coach Longobardo. He had one of those helmets, and I remember it clear as day. And I remember like I was surfing on Sideline Swap, and I saw it pop up. You just type in whatever, and that caught my eye. And I saw who was selling it, and it was Laura Varanta. So I'm like, oh my god, like I know her. So I shot her a text, and I'm like, can I buy this? I didn't know you were selling it. Let me buy this from you.
Yeah.
And so got to talk to her about it. I didn't realize that her family was involved with hockey pro shops back in the day. So she had like this pristine Mission Carbster helmet that was like still in the cloth protective case.
Okay.
So like there's no scratches, like nothing. It's in mint condition. So I'm super stoked to talk about that whenever we get around to that for Retro Roller on the next one. Okay. So, but it is not adjustable. It is very much one piece. So like either it fits your head or it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, between helmets and then three finger gloves, and also the fad of people cutting out their fingertips on their gloves too in the late '90s, early 2000s.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. That was fun to talk to Justin about that. Justin Hoffman. I didn't realize that was like his baby. That was like kind of his hill he was going to die on. Because in the interview that I did with him, I was like, "What was your favorite piece of gear that you designed that you had a hand in making?" And he was like, I saw him like pound his desk. He was like, damn it, Josh. People need to go to 3-finger gloves because your pinky's not that strong. You put 2 of your fingers together, you've got better grip. And it's like I remember having a couple of pairs of those gloves. It was the Mission Grommet, which was I think the youth one, and then the Wicked Light, their 3-finger glove variation. But having that lobster claw grip, it was unique. It was unique.
Yeah, you brought me down memory lane.
That was the intention. No, if you haven't followed them already, give Retro Roller a follow. I try to do weekly releases. That's not going to happen this month with all the hockey. I'll be up at Narch working this week and then coaching and playing next week. So there's going to be a little bit of a delay with the content drop, but we'll probably resume the end of July.
Okay. And I'll end up throwing it down in the information below the YouTube stream or whatever. And this way people can just click the link and go right there to it, as well as the Unify Elite Draft League link. But yeah, I mean, anything you got going on, feel free to tag me. I'll share it. It's what I do.
No, you're the man. I appreciate you, Dan.
So, I think our time here is coming to an end. So, here's my shtick. If you're forechecking in roller hockey, don't let up, because there's no offsides. I'm Dan Dean. Josh, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.